Welcome to Tuesday's topic. I'm Pam Carnes with the Cherokee County Chamber of Commerce, and each week we visit with someone that brings you up to speed on something that's happening here in our community. If you were watching our Tuesday's topic back several weeks ago, actually in July, then you're thinking, I think I recognize that presenter, and you do. Erin Wofford is the lead organizer for North Georgia Through Fair Count, which is the 501c3 organization that's dedicated to partnering with communities like ours to ensure an accurate and fair count of our citizens as that pertains to the 2020 census. So we appreciate, Erin, you being back with us. I know you're busy, but we appreciate you coming back to Tuesday's topic to update everyone on the fair count.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Pam, for inviting me back to another Tuesday's topic. The census is an incredibly important function of our government, and it's really important for everybody to get counted. So I'm just thankful for the opportunity to kind of remind everybody what the census is, but also give some important updates about it.
Absolutely. And we want to ensure that everybody has a chance to be counted. So since we visited several weeks ago, what's changed? What's happening? How does Cherokee look? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the last time we spoke back in mid-July, we kind of just went over what the census is, why it's so important for everybody to participate. We also touched on some challenges to getting a complete count. And so just as a quick reminder for your viewers, if they didn't get a chance to watch that, or if it's just been so long since they've seen it, the census is a count of all people who live in the US. This national head count, taken every decade, is required by our Constitution, and it's used to direct federal dollars to states and localities and to ensure our government fairly and accurately represents us, the people. And so here at Fair Count, we are dedicated to ensuring all communities receive their share of resources and representation, especially our underserved and disenfranchised communities. So due to COVID-19, which I think has impacted or affected everybody in some way. So due to disruptions and delays to the census timeline, it was extended from the original date of July 31st until October 31st. However, a couple weeks ago in early August, the Census Bureau announced that in order to deliver the results by the end of this year, by the end of 2020, this year's count will end September 30th. And so that's a month earlier than previously planned. And if you're looking at your calendar, that's about a month away. And so this shortened timeline means our historically undercounted populations, such as low-income households, rural communities, children under 5, racial and ethnic minorities, they do have a greater risk of being missed during this once-a-decade population count. And so with less time, the 2020 census will have to rely more on administrative records, proxy interviews, and a statistical process called imputation. And these methods have historically resulted in the undercounting of Black, Latinx, immigrant, and refugee communities.
Gotcha. So most definitely COVID has impacted all aspects of our life. And this is not necessarily what the census would want to see based on having to change that timeline. But how is the census really connected to COVID?
Yeah, and so as it should be, COVID-19 is on the tops of everyone's minds. So the census maybe just has been pushed to the side for, a whole number of reasons. But we are still in the midst of a pandemic, and census participation is more important than ever before, since the data collected from it will be used to guide recovery efforts starting next year in 2021, and it's used to allocate federal funding. So even without a pandemic, even in normal times, an undercount translates to fewer federal dollars for critical public services, fewer opportunities for economic growth, and unfair political representation for the next 10 years. So any loss of resources will be detrimental to communities already grappling with the devastating effects of COVID-19. So as we begin this long process of recovery, people will need the resources that are allocated through the census. And so the 2020 census results will direct more than $1.5 trillion every year for the next decade. And this is through critical services such as special education, housing assistance, and healthcare, and over 300 federal programs such as Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, and Head Start. And so many residents and families rely on these resources. You may know someone who uses Medicare, maybe you use Medicaid, but all of us need well-funded schools, roads, hospitals, and other elements that make up a healthy community. And so the safest and easiest way to ensure our communities thrive is for everyone to submit their 2020 census questionnaire and to ensure and encourage their friends and family to do the same. And so it's important to note that the federal dollars, they won't follow the need. So even though there is great need in our communities, the only way to get that funding is through the numbers. And so the numbers need to fully and accurately reflect who lives in Cherokee County, so we ensure that Cherokee County receives its fair share. And so all this in mind, I know there's a lot of information, but if you haven't done so already, you can complete your census questionnaire right now. And so you can go online to my2020census.gov, and you can use a computer, a smartphone, or a tablet. You can also call the Census Bureau directly, and so the number for English speakers is 844-330-2020. And then for Spanish speakers, you can call 844-468-2020. And another option is just to mail back that paper form. And so a census ID is not required to do any of that. You just fill in your address, and that's kind of how you complete it. And so it takes about 10 minutes to do. And I just want to make sure that everyone knows to include everybody who lives in your household. So if you have any babies, if you have young children, even non-relatives, roommates, older individuals, maybe aunts and uncles and grandparents and things like that, so they all count. And so all responses are protected by law, and they will remain confidential for 72 years. So I think that's really important to highlight that the census is completely safe and secure. Your information cannot and will not be shared with any government agency. And so like I alluded to before, you do have until September 30th to respond, but I really encourage everybody, don't wait. Just do it as soon as you can.
Well, and I agree with you, Erin. It's a simple process, and it might not even take them the full 10 minutes. So why not just go ahead and take care of that? Now, if someone has not submitted yet, and they, over the course of the next month, don't do that on their own, door to door, those volunteers are coming, or those employees are coming from the census, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So in addition to self-responding, which ends on September 30th, information is also collected through door knocking, and this is also called the non-response follow-up period. So this started August 11th, and it will end on September 30th. So if you have a calendar, please mark September 30th on it, because this is a really important date. And if you haven't responded yet, you will get a visit from a census worker at some point, and they will just be there to collect your responses in person. Some of you may have seen census workers out in your communities and neighborhoods. I've actually seen a couple, or some of you may have already been visited by a census worker. This process is safe and helps us get an accurate count. Census workers are hired from the local community. They're your neighbors, they're your fellow residents, and they take a lifetime oath to keep your information private. The census really values and prioritizes keeping that information private because it's such a pivotal part of our democracy and of our country. And so non-response follow-up is also being done in accordance with public health guidelines to protect the health and safety of workers as well as you. And so if you don't want someone knocking on your door, like we said before, just go ahead and self-respond online, by phone, by mail. It takes a few minutes. Just do that as soon as possible. But if you do have any questions or you aren't able to respond on your own, I think answering your door is a great way to, of course, safely speak with someone from the U.S. Census Bureau and to get counted.
Perfect, and that's what definitely it is about. You touched on that relative to how these numbers impact Cherokee County, from whether it's based upon how we're represented at the federal level, based upon where those constitutional lines are. Y'all, it's about dollars coming into our community, as Erin mentioned, things for roads and grant programs, that sort of thing. But of course, what I want to know, and I've got the lid off my pen and I'm ready to make some notes, how do we look in Cherokee County? How are we doing?
Yeah, okay, so as of today,
Okay.
Cherokee County's self-response rate is 64.6%. So that's a pretty good number. That's a pretty decent number. That's one of the higher response rates in our state. So this basically just means that about 35% of households have not been counted yet.
Okay.
And again, I just stress this a lot. If you haven't been counted yet, just go ahead and respond on your own, or you can also do it in person with a census worker. And An incomplete count will translate to underfunded and underrepresented communities for the next 10 years. So another census won't be taken until 2030. So imagine what can happen between now and then. And so if you do want that fair share of resources and representation, just go ahead and participate in the 2020 census. It's easy, it's simple, and it's safe. And it's especially important for residents in Waleska to respond. I just want to note that Waleska currently has the lowest response rate in the county. When I last checked, it was 39.1%. So you can see that's about half of the county's overall response rate. So if you're in Waleska, please make that a priority. Encourage your neighbors, encourage your coworkers, encourage your family, encourage them to get counted.
Perfectly. Yeah, perfect. That is very important. Yes. So if you know folks in Waleska, let's encourage their response. What else can we do? We can encourage those from the Waleska area and really all over the county to respond if they haven't. We can make sure that we definitely do that by September 30th. But what else can our viewers do, Erin?
So if you want to get involved to promote participation, and I hope that your viewers do, you can visit us at faircount.org, and you can just explore some of the volunteer opportunities that we have to help get Georgians counted. We're involved with this texting project just to reach communities that are at most risk of being undercounted, and just to say, hey, you know, the census is still going on, don't miss your chance, and this is how you can do it. But you can also do something even easier. Just share information about the census on your social media pages, or even just by word of mouth. Just remind 10 friends and family members, you know, have you responded? Have you completed your census? And if they have, say that's great, you know, thank you so much. But if they haven't, that's a really great opportunity to say, well, I want you to, because, you know, for X, Y, and Z, you can kind of make it your own and why the census is so important for you. And so we do have just over a month left to get everybody counted. That is going to go by so fast. And so please make this a priority. Please understand that the census is how federal dollars and resources and representation are allocated to communities. And the numbers that we get this year, they're going to stay with us for the next 10 years. So it's really, really important to get your census done and to encourage others.
Absolutely. That 10-year window, I think Erin has touched on that, you know, a couple of times. That's very important to remember. We're not going to turn around and do this again in 6 months or in 6 years, y'all. We're talking 10 years. So I don't necessarily want to think about what 10 years from now looks like. Oh my gracious, I'll just tell y'all, that means I'm 62 years old. 62. That I just, you know, that seems like an eternity away. And it will be from the standpoint of that count yet again to be able to enhance those numbers and dollars for our community. The year has flown by quickly already, I feel like, but yet a 10-year window of time of waiting for new census data is not necessarily going to be short. So visit faircount.org to find out about ways to be involved. If you have not completed your census form yet and you want to go ahead and take care of that before the actual census worker comes to your house, that's my2020census.gov. And then, Erin, I'm going to repeat those numbers again too for English. You would dial 844-330-2020. And for those that need to be able to answer those questions in Spanish, that's 844-468-2020. So, Erin, thank you for what you and your coworkers are doing to ensure that individuals like me, families like mine, and communities like ours here in Cherokee County are fairly counted and that we have a voice for the next 10 years. So thank you for all that you do. And perhaps once everything wraps up after September 30th, maybe we can visit again and see what the outcome looks like for Cherokee.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I know that you'll be ready for September 30th in a sense to come and go, but I appreciate you being on Tuesday's topic.